Under the bright studio lights of MSNBC's live broadcast, the tension in the room could have been sliced with a knife. The audience had come expecting a routine political debate, another night of back-and-forth sparring between seasoned lawmakers. But what unfolded that evening would become one of the most talked-about moments in modern American politics, and the downfall of one of Washington's most powerful figures. Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, sat comfortably in her chair, her trademark grin fixed on her face. Her opponent that evening was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a man known for his razor-sharp wit, Southern charm, and no-nonsense candor. The show's host, Samantha Rourke, was eager to see sparks fly. The debate topic was supposed to be about federal spending and government accountability, but Pelosi, ever the showwoman, had other plans. She'd been irked by Kennedy's rising popularity among working-class Americans and his unfiltered approach to politics. For months, clips of his speeches had been going viral, short, sharp, and devastatingly funny. The media loved to mock him, but people loved to listen. So when the cameras rolled and the debate began, Pelosi saw her opportunity. "Senator Kennedy," she said with an exaggerated smile, "you talk a lot about fiscal responsibility, but maybe you should start at home. I mean, your wife seems to enjoy quite the lifestyle for someone who claims to be living on principle." There was a murmur from the audience. The host's eyes widened. Kennedy blinked slowly. Pelosi wasn't done. She leaned forward, clearly enjoying herself. "I mean, really, pearls, designer dresses, charity galas. Maybe she should start a lecture series on how to live humbly while married to a moral crusader." The studio broke into nervous laughter, some forced, some genuine. The host tried to steer the conversation back, but Pelosi was on a roll. She didn't see Kennedy's expression darkening, the way his jaw tightened and his hands folded neatly in front of him. He let her finish. Every word. Every sneer. And then he struck. "Madam Speaker," Kennedy said, his voice calm but cutting, "I wasn't aware that being kind, elegant, and generous was a crime in your world. My wife has never needed a taxpayer-funded plane to fly across the country or insider trading tips to build her wealth. She's done it the honest way, through work, grace, and dignity. Qualities I suspect you wouldn't recognize if they slapped you in the face." The audience gasped. Pelosi's smile faltered. Kennedy leaned forward, his tone tightening. "And as for mocking her, I'd advise you to be careful, ma'am. You've spent 40 years in Washington perfecting the art of tearing down good people to make yourself feel taller. But attacking someone's wife on live TV? That's beneath even you. And that's saying something." Pelosi's face flushed crimson. "Oh, please, Senator." But Kennedy wasn't finished. He rose slightly from his chair, his voice rising just enough to command the room. "My wife doesn't play politics. She doesn't sit behind closed doors deciding which lobbyist to smile at next. She's a nurse, Nancy. A woman who's spent her life helping sick people. You mock her for having pearls? Those were her mother's. You mock her for attending charity events? Those were for children with cancer. So before you open your mouth again, maybe remember that decency doesn't come with a party label, it comes from the heart. Something you and your colleagues seem to have misplaced about 30 years ago." The studio was dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause. The audience didn't know whether to clap or hold their breath. Pelosi shifted uncomfortably, her smirk gone. Kennedy's southern drawl grew sharper, almost surgical. "You can call me old-fashioned, ma'am. You can call me whatever your PR team tells you to call me next week. But you don't talk about my wife. Not now, not ever." He sat back, folded his arms, and gave a faint, almost pitying smile. "Now, if you'd like to continue discussing the budget, something you've failed to balance since I was in college, I'd be more than happy to educate you." The crowd erupted. Applause thundered through the studio, cheers echoing as if someone had just scored the winning touchdown. Pelosi, visibly shaken, forced a laugh and tried to brush it off, but the damage was done. Clips of the moment flooded the internet before the show even ended. Within minutes, "Kennedy defends his wife" was trending on every social media platform. Millions of Americans watched, shared, and replayed his words, over and over. In small towns across the country, people who rarely tuned into politics nodded approvingly. To them, Kennedy wasn't just a senator, he was a husband who stood up when someone crossed a line. The media tried to spin it, of course. MSNBC edited their replay, cutting parts of Kennedy's response, trying to soften Pelosi's jab. But the uncut version had already gone viral. It spread like wildfire, across Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and every platform that mattered. By the next morning, even liberal networks couldn't ignore the backlash. Viewers flooded Pelosi's office with angry calls and emails. Headlines screamed across the country. "Kennedy silences Pelosi after cruel comment about his wife." Pelosi mocked Kennedy's family, instantly regretted it. The moment that ended Nancy Pelosi's TV career. Kennedy himself didn't say much afterward. He simply told reporters, "I don't take kindly to people attacking my family. Debate me all you want, but leave good people out of your political games." That single quote became iconic. Behind the scenes, Pelosi was furious. Her aides scrambled to do damage control, but the internet had already decided. Memes of Kennedy's calm yet devastating response filled timelines. Late-night shows played the clip, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with disbelief. Even people who disagreed with his politics couldn't help but respect his composure. Meanwhile, Kennedy's wife, Rebecca, kept quiet. She issued no statements, gave no interviews. When reporters finally caught her outside a hospital in Baton Rouge, she simply smiled and said, "My husband's a good man. That's all I need to say." That quiet dignity only made the story stronger. 3 days later, Kennedy took to the Senate floor. Not to gloat, not to boast, but to make a point. "I don't care what side you're on," he said firmly. "We can fight about policy, spending, taxes, that's what we're here for. But when politics becomes personal, when you attack a man's wife, his children, or his faith, you've crossed a line this country can't afford to cross anymore. Decency isn't old-fashioned. It's American." His speech went viral too, earning him bipartisan applause. Even a few Democrats nodded quietly, recognizing the truth in his words. Pelosi, however, couldn't recover. Days after the broadcast, sponsors began pulling their support from the network. The host, Samantha Rourke, apologized publicly for not stepping in. "I should have stopped it," she said on air, visibly shaken. What happened that night was wrong. Senator Kennedy was right to defend his family. Within weeks, Pelosi avoided all live interviews. Rumors swirled that she'd been advised to stay off television for a while. Kennedy, on the other hand, saw his popularity soar. His approval ratings jumped nearly 15 points. Invitations poured in from talk shows, but he declined most of them. When asked why, he simply said, "I don't need a victory lap. I said what needed to be said." Months later, during a charity gala in Louisiana, Rebecca Kennedy took the stage for a brief speech. She looked elegant, calm, the same woman Pelosi had tried to mock. Her words, though soft, carried immense weight. "I didn't need my husband to defend me," she said, smiling. "But he did. And that's what love looks like, not politics, not power. Just standing up when someone tries to tear you down. And I think America could use a little more of that." The audience rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. That night, reporters noted how Kennedy looked at her, not as a senator basking in fame, but as a man proud of his wife. Over time, the infamous broadcast became a symbol of something larger, the battle between decency and division in American politics. Kennedy's moment of fury wasn't seen as rage, it was seen as righteous defense. A reminder that behind the sound bites and viral clips, there were real people, real families. Nancy Pelosi would go on to appear on a few more shows, but the confidence was gone. Every time she smiled too wide or made a cutting remark, the audience stiffened. The ghost of that night followed her everywhere. As for Kennedy, he didn't gloat. He went back to work, the same Southern senator with his dry humor, his pocket constitution, and his love for home-cooked food. But something about him had changed. His eyes carried more steel, his words more weight. When asked years later about that moment, he gave a small grin and said, "I didn't go nuclear, son. I just reminded her that even in Washington, there's still a line you don't cross." And the nation never forgot it.